Today in lab, I showed you how to calculate correlations in Google Sheets, and I'm also going to be posting some directions on how to write your results section in which you take those correlations and write them as a paragraph. But I thought it would also be helpful for me to give you a video in which I review how to calculate those correlations in Google Sheets, and I also show you a step-by-step example of writing out the paragraph for the results. So let's go to Google Sheets first. So let's imagine that I've done a survey asking these questions, asking how many hours of sleep do you get per night, how many hours do you commute per day, what's your GPA, and how many hours do you spend on social media per week. And let's say that I want to get the correlation between hours of sleep and commute hours, or hours of commute per day. What I would need to do is type in equals correl for correlation. Then I would put the left parentheses. Then I would highlight this column, hours of sleep. Then I would put a comma right here. And then I would highlight my other column, which is commute hours. Then I would close the parentheses on the right side. And this is going to calculate the correlation between everything. Well, actually, we need to leave out the column titles. So this is how it actually should work. So we type in equals, correl, then we highlight all of the hours of sleep, but not the column title. Then we put a comma. Then we highlight all of the commute hours and leave out the column title. Then we put the right parentheses and press enter. And now we have the correlation between hours of sleep and commute hours for this data set. Now let's say that I want the correlation between hours of sleep and GPA. Well, I do the same thing, but with the hours of sleep and GPA columns. So equals correl in the left parentheses. Then we highlight hours of sleep, then we put a comma, and we highlight the GPA column, then the right parentheses and press enter, and it's done. Now, let's say I want the correlation between hours of social media per week and GPA. Well, I would put in equals the same thing, correl, left parentheses. It doesn't matter which one I highlight first, so here's GPA, comma, then highlight hours of social media, then put the right parentheses, and press enter. Now, let's say that I want hours of sleep and hours on social media. So it works the same way. And we'll just calculate one more. Maybe commute hours and GPA. And now I'm going to label each of these so that we know what each one stands for. So these are the correlations that I've calculated. And I told you today that I want you to pick the 5 that stand out to you as, I want you to pick 5 correlations that you're most interested in or that really stand out as important for your study, and calculate those as a minimum. And you can also calculate more than 5 if you want to, but that's up to you. And let's see, so I've calculated 5, which is the minimum that I said you would need for your study. And let me explain a little bit about what these represent, what these stand for. We briefly covered correlations in our class, but I'll just review it a little bit right now. If the correlation is a negative number, it's a negative correlation. And if it's a positive number, it's a positive correlation. So a negative correlation means that the two variables tend to go in opposite directions, meaning when one goes up, the other tends to go down. And if it's a positive correlation, that's means that when the two variables tend to go in the same direction. So when one goes up, the other usually goes up. When one goes down, the other usually goes down with it. So let's look at what I've just calculated here and try to interpret these. So here we have A and B, which is hours of sleep and commute hours, and it's a negative number. So what that means is my data set is showing a negative correlation between hours of sleep and commute hours, which means that, at least in my data set, people who are sleeping more tend to be having shorter commute times. And you can actually see that just by looking at these numbers, looking at the data set, because you see this person who's commuting 30 hours, which probably isn't possible, but it's just a made-up number. They're not getting much sleep. But this person who has this shorter commute is getting more sleep. So you can see here how hours of sleep is going up, and when it goes up, commute is usually going down. They're going in opposite directions. And I probably should have made this commute minutes to make it more realistic, but it's just made up numbers anyway. And let's look at this positive number right here. That is hours of sleep and GPA. So it's a positive correlation, which means that in our data set, when hours of sleep goes up, GPA tends to go up as well. And you can actually see that here because the people who are getting 5 hours of sleep are getting lower GPAs on average, like 3.2, 3.5. And the people who are getting 8 hours of sleep have higher GPAs, 3.7. So the two variables are going up together. So it's positive. And after you get your correlations, which you started calculating today, you have to test them for statistical significance, because if the correlation turns out to be statistically significant, it means that you can confidently say that it isn't just chance, that the two variables are actually related. So I'm going to show you how to test each correlation. You have to test them one at a time. And since we're not using SPSS, I'm going to have you use something called a p-value calculator. The p-value is what you need to do the test. So go to Google and type in p-value calculator. And we need this p-value calculator from GraphPad. So here we go. So the correlation coefficient is R. Well, R stands for it. So what we're going to be getting is P from R, because all of these correlations we've calculated are, well, R is the letter that stands for it. So it's the first, second, third, R, and so on. So let's take this first one, which is negative 0.984, and enter it in. I'm just going to use 3 digits because, well, 2 or 3 would be close enough, but I'm using 3. And we need something called df. You might have heard of this before if you've taken a stats class. So in the case of a correlation, the df is just the sample size minus 2, which would be, well, I have 8 people. 8 minus 2 would be 6. So it's really just the number of participants minus the number of variables, which is 2 for a correlation. So yeah, 8 minus 2 is 6. So that goes in for df. And don't worry what df really represents, what it stands for, because for the purpose of in our class, it's really just a step toward getting p, which is what we really want. So I'm clicking on compute p, and it says less than 0.0001. And if it comes out to less than 0.001, we'll just round it off to 0. Because p-values are rounded to 3 decimal places in APA style. And now let's decide if this is a significant correlation. Well, if it's significant if p is 0.05 or less. So if, let's say, if p is, I'm just going to put some examples here. If p is exactly 0.05, that's significant. If p is, let's say, 0.049, that's significant. Or if it's even something lower, like let's say 0.03. But if p is above 0.05, like let's say 0.053 or 0.054, or something higher like 0.06 or 0.08, that's not significant. So yeah, significant means 0.05 or less. Not significant is above 0.05. And 0 is definitely under 0.05, so it's significant. So this is a significant correlation in my data set. And I'm going to calculate all of the other ones the same way by entering, well, going to the p-value calculator, entering R, and also entering df, which is going to be 6 for all of these. And after I do that, I'm going to show you what they all came out to. So now I've calculated all of these the same way. This one is significant, it's under 0.05. Same thing for this one, and this one also, that's just right below 0.05. Now what I'm going to do is take all of these correlations, which are R, and then the P, which is over here, and put them into the results paragraph. So let me just label this right here. So this will be the results section that comes right after the method section. You'll have the word results right here as the heading. So first, you need an opening paragraph, or no, an opening sentence that describes what correlations you calculated. So you would, in this case, I would say, well, I'm just gonna say we because I know most of you are working in groups, so it's more than one person. So we, in my case, it would be we calculated Pearson correlations between hours of sleep, hours of commute per day, GPA, and hours of social media use per week. So this is the opening sentence that you need. It says what you calculated, and now in the second sentence you'll list out the significant positive correlations. So let me look back at my results here. So this one is a negative number. This one is positive. It's the only positive one. And it's not significant. So I actually don't have any significant positive correlations. So I would actually skip that sentence and go straight to the negative correlations because all of the other ones are negative. And I would say significant negative correlations were found between well, the first one is this one, which is hours of sleep and commute hours. And then what I would do is put R equals in parentheses, and then P equals. And then put the R and the P, the correlation, and the p-value. And in my directions, it explains how to do that. And they're just the same numbers that I have right here. The 0.63 and the no, I'm sorry. I'm focusing on this, negative 0.98 and the 0. That's the one I'm talking about. And then I would move on, and I would say, I would talk about this next negative correlation, which is between C and D, which is GPA and hours on social media. So I'm going to keep my wording consistent and say hours of social media use per week. And then put R equals, and then P equals. And then move ahead to the next one. So let's see what the next one is. A and D, that's my next significant negative correlation, which is hours of sleep and hours on social media. and then just keep going until you get to the last one. So far we have the opening sentence, we have the sentence that lists out our significant negative correlations, and then we just need a closing sentence that says all possible correlations are shown in table 1, because you'll have a table at the end of your paper, and this just refers the reader to see all of the correlations in the table, and even the ones that weren't significant. And yeah, so your results section really just has 4 um, sentences. It has the opening sentence that says what you calculated, the significant negative correlations, the significant positive correlations listed out, and finally the closing sentence that mentions the table. And then after this, you'll just go straight to discussion and start the discussion section right here. And I mentioned this in my directions, but R and P are both italics like this. That's just APA. Yeah, so your results section won't be very long. It'll be quite a bit shorter than the other sections. And just let me know if you have